Welcome to Aldsidu. Ald meaning old, Sidu meaning customs. In this channel we discuss old ways heathenry. This is my second video in the Gods and Goddesses series, part 2, Thor. This video is about Thor. And before I go on, let me honor Microphone if you watch his channel. Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Hey Microphone, shout out to you. And hey, shout out to you Mr. Hawk. Thank you for donating this microphone to this channel. He heard the cries of my followers on YouTube and he said, Robert needs a mic. So, hey, here we go with my new microphone. So today's video is about Thor. Now, in Old Norse, Thor's name is Thor. In Old English, it's Thunar. In Old Frisian, it's Thunar. In Old Saxon, it's Thunar. And in Old High German, it's Donar. And yes, one of Santa's reindeers is named Donar. And Blitzen is also a name that would go along with Thor quite well. So Donar and Blitzen probably do have some connections to Thor. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Not saying that Santa goes back to pre-Christian Germanic heathenry, because he certainly does not. But the name Donar absolutely does. So, most people today believe the Norse gods were just venerated in Scandinavia, but reality is the Scandinavian people spoke what linguists call Germanic languages. The Germanic tribes, the Germanic peoples lived in this area on the map, hence we have these words, because the Frisians are over here, the Old Saxons are right here. Very few Saxons moved to England. That's why England is named after the Angles. Most, if not actually, Bede says all the Angles went to England, and that's why the English today speak the language of the Angles. And the Saxons remained in Saxony, though some went. But most of the Saxons remained in Saxony, and the Saxons in Saxony were heathens much longer than the Anglo-Saxons in England. Hence, I'm going to be giving a lot of Old Saxon information about the Old Saxon god Thunar today, which is Thor as well. So, these gods were not just venerated in Scandinavia, but also in Germanic lands to the south of Scandinavia. Thunar has red hair and a red beard. He is the god of thunder. His Proto-Indo-European name means thunderer. Our modern day Thursday is named after Thunar or Thor and means Thor's day. Now I'm going to get into it in the next slide, but the Germanic tribes did not believe in a 7-day week until after they became Christians. Thunar or Thor is the son of Odin and Jord. Jord is also known as Earth or Eartha, so in Old Saxon this would be Thunar, son of Woden and Eartha. Thor is a fearsome weapon. His war hammer, which is his name is Mjolnir. Thunar wears a belt of strength, and like Odin and Sasnoth, Thunar was one of 3 gods that the Old Saxons in Saxony were forced to renounce upon their forced conversion to Christianity at the end of the Saxon Wars in the 9th century in the 800s. So the Old Saxon baptismal vow that survives in the historical sources: I renounce all the works and words of the devil, Thunar and Woden and Sasnoth, and all these fiends that are their associates. Thunar is the half-brother of Sasnoth, the father of the Saxon tribe. Sasnoth and Thunar, or Thor, are both sons of Odin, as I've said, and Thunar's wife is Sib, in German, Sif, with an F in the Norse language. Our modern English word of sibling comes from this word. Sibya is an Old Saxon word meaning family. Our word siblings, I said, comes from it. So if you have brothers and sisters, you probably have brothers and sister-in-laws as well. And their children are also considered siblings. So your brother or your sister's children are considered your siblings in Germanic thought as well. Hence Thunar's wife, Sib. And Sib was the loveliest of all women. She had blonde hair, beautiful blonde hair that was cut off. Now, I said earlier that the names of the days of the week came later. Germanic heathens had days of the moon until Christianity with its all-powerful God came along, that God created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th, blah, blah, blah. Heathens had days of the moon, and the average lunar moon or month was 29.5 days. In our modern world, the moon has nothing to do with a month, but if you lived in the Germanic tribes in heathen times, a month was a lunar cycle. Even the word month is related to the word moon. So you add a th to the number 6, you get sixth. And same with seventh and eighth and ninth, etc. So you add a th to the word moon and you get, a month. That's how it works. So basically the Romans started to adopt Christian ideas, obviously, and they were the ones that decided to name the classical planets in Latin. That was their language, of course. And they had this ecclesiastical tradition of numbering the days in ecclesiastical Latin, beginning with Dominica, the Lord's Day, as the first day. And then they would use the Roman names of the planets for the other days of the week. So you have Sunday, you have Monday, which are celestial bodies, and then you have things like Mars and Aries Day gets equated with 2. So in other words, what's going on is the Romans decided to use their Interpretatio Germanica, whereas the Roman names for the days of the week were replaced with Germanic equivalents. Hence, we get Friday named after Frigg, the wife of Odin, for Friday. Thor's Day would be named after Thor, and so on and so forth. So, the fourth day of the week was equated with Woden or Odin. So that's how the names for the days of the week happen. So again, yes, today these are in our English language because, again, the Angles were a Germanic tribe that venerated Thor. In Old English, I said it's Thunar. So that's why we use, thanks to the Roman Christians, that's why we use Germanic gods as names of the week, because they were the Germanic names for the planets originally. So let's talk about holy places to Thor. So the oak is the tree that's most often struck by lightning. I'm not saying that other trees don't get struck by lightning, but for some reason oaks get struck by lightning more than other trees. And Willibald, he is a saint, and in his Life of Boniface, his 8th century work, he talks about the destruction of Donar's oak, which is a holy place in Fritzlar. And let me just read this passage, though it's right on the screen. Some wanted secretly and some openly to bloat or to sacrifice to trees and springs. Like, this is what they did. They would sacrifice in front of an oak tree to Thor. And remember springs later, because one of the holy sites I'm going to talk about is Thor's well, and often wells come from water. They always come from water. But some in secret, others openly practiced victims and divinations and incantations, and some turned their attention to auguries and auspices and various sacrificial rites, but others, with sounder minds, abandoned all the profanations of heathenism and committed none of these treacherous acts. With the advice and counsel of these last, the saint attempted, as in St. Boniface, in the place called Geismir, while the servants of God stood by his side, to destroy or to cause to fall, a certain oak of extraordinary size, which is called by an old name of the heathens, the oak of Donar. And when, in the strength of his steadfast heart, he had cut down the lower notch, there was present a great multitude of heathens who, with their souls, they were earnestly cursing the enemy of the gods. They were cursing Christ. But when the foreside of the tree was notched only a little, suddenly the oak naturally fell down, and driven from a blast above, from the Almighty God, the oak crashed to the ground, and it was divided into 4 parts, thanks to the Most High. And the 4 trunks of huge size, equal in length, were seen, and the brethren who stood by were unwrought. And at this sight, the pagans, who before cursed, now they on the contrary believed, and they all blessed the Lord God, and put away their former reviling. And moreover, the most holy bishop, as in St. Boniface, after taking counsel with the brethren, built from the timber of the tree a wooden oratory, which is another way of saying church. And he dedicated this church in honor of St. Peter the Apostle. So, for some reason, the Christian bishops they destroyed oaks dedicated to Thor, and they built churches to St. Peter. Thor is always equated with St. Peter. Not entirely sure why they chose to do this. Maybe because Thor was the most popular god amongst the Germanic populace and the Scandinavian populace, the masses. And St. Peter was the first pope, so maybe this is the simple connection. So after Donar's Oak, which is north of Frankfurt today, just south of Old Saxony, but it's, probably 150 kilometers north of Frankfurt, but still, maybe 100 kilometers, but still just south of Old Saxony. That is where Donar's Oak existed. Now we also have a holy place to Thor at Uppsala. There was a temple at Uppsala, a very famous temple. And inside it, according to Adam of Bremen in the 11th century, he stated that there were 3 statues to 3 gods there, Odin, Thor, and Freyr. So Adam of Bremen in 1073 of the Common Era, he states that Thor, the Norse reckon, rules the sky. He governs thunder and lightning, winds and storms, fine weather and fertility. Adam also details that the people of Uppsala had appointed priests to each of the gods. So there are priests who are dedicated to each of the gods. So it appears that the priests there, anyways, if we take Adam of Bremen at his word, how accurate was he? If you're a priest, you're only serving one god, according to Adam of Bremen. But is that accurate? But the priests were there to offer up bloats. And bloats were done to Thor with plague or famine. So what's kind of strange is if Freyr is a statue of a giant phallus, I would think that that would be the god that they would be sacrificing to for that. But Adam states in 1073, an English preacher, Wulfred, was lynched by assembled Germanic pagans for profaning a representation of Thor. So obviously you have bishops, they're always coming from England because the English were very early Christians, and the English were always trying to convert the Germanic tribes. So even St. Boniface, who felled Thor's or Donar's oak, was a English bishop. Walpurgis of Walpurgis Knight fame also destroyed heathenry and heathen holy places, preached the destruction of heathenry, and stood by as Christian soldiers killed people who refused to be forcefully baptized. They instead chose the sword, and these people were fine with that. So I don't know why we celebrate that saint today. That's crazy. I don't, but modern Asatru often does. I guess that's their right. There's also a place in Hohenseeberg of Thunar's Well. So remember before in that quote that by Willibald, that heathens sacrificed by trees and springs, or they bloated. So Thunar's Well obviously is related to a water source. And in Old Saxony, where the Old Saxons still venerated the heathen gods long after the English converted, they had a sacred place called Thunar's Well. And this is a museum picture of what the site looked like in heathen times. It was a giant hill fort. And I'll show you the walls, what the walls look like on the next picture. The well was over here, by the way. So the next slide, this is what the walls look like. This is a artist rendition from PhDs writing at the Archaeological Museum. And this is a modern picture today. So if you walk around Hohenseeberg, you can see some of the earthenwork walls today. I mean, it's kind of rounded over the last 1,200 years or so. But these are what the walls look like now today. Here is a site of where the well was. And right here is what this picture is. You can see that Peter's Brunnen which means Peter's well. I mean, this is obviously Thunar's Brunnen in heathen times, but remember the Christians, they build churches at holy sites. There is a church right near here, which we get to right here in the next slide. Charlemagne, king of the Franks, the Christian Franks, they built a church on the site. This is not the church dating back to Charlemagne. This is at the same spot, but the Swedes during the 30 Years' War in the 17th century destroyed the church. Naturally, it was rebuilt, so that's this church. And you can see me there with the Saxon heathen and professional archaeologist, PhD candidate Sven, and another Saxon heathen in Germany. And you can see a map at the Thunar's well area today, because you know there's statues by the Second and Third Reichs at this site. These are later statues. Very cool place that I urge you all to visit. Let's talk about more archaeological evidence. The Nordendorf fibulae. These are from the mid-6th to the 7th century. Now I'm taking this from Wikipedia, obviously. This is not the greatest website to take information from, by the way, but sometimes it's really good. The sources at the bottom are good. This is a beginner's video, so beginners, check out the sources at the bottom of that Wikipedia article. Some good reading for sure. This is pretty well south of Old Saxony. In Bavaria, these were found. So we have mid-6th and early 7th century names of Thunar and Woden on these fibulae. So we have these names well attested long before the Viking Age. So the archaeological evidence is there. Now, I just wanted to bring us back to Thor. You know, the mighty hammer of Thor is known as Mjolnir, and this became a heathen sign of solidarity during forced Christianization. So Thor's hammers were really not worn until about the time of the Viking Age, when all the English were going around forcefully Christianizing everyone. So were the Franks, by the way. The English were sending the missionaries. It was really the Frankish armies doing most of the Christianization, but the Old English missionaries were sent in, and since they were always wearing crosses, the heathens, as a show of solidarity, started to wear Mjolnirs. So again, Thor was the most popular god to the common heathen people, and the Mjolnir necklaces bore certainly strong witness to Thor's popularity. Now, before I end the video, just wanted to state that Thor fathered a goddess Thrudr with Jarn Saxa. He also fathered Magni with the mother whose name is not recorded, so it might be Sif. He also fathered Madi. And by way of Odin, Thor has numerous brothers. His most famous is Balder or Baldag or Balde. Thor has 2 servants. He rides on a cart. I prefer cart over chariot. Chariot makes me think of Egyptians. I don't know about y'all, but you know, Thor rides a cart pulled by 2 goats. These goats he kills and he eats every day, and these goats resurrect. And Thor has 3 known dwellings. Thor wields his great hammer, Mjolnir, and he wears a belt of strength. So your Old Saxon word for strength is right here, Megin, M-E-G-I-N. So you see the name in the Old Norse there. He also wears iron gloves that he uses to hold Mjolnir, and he has a giant staff. Thor's biggest enemy, of course, is Jormungandr, the world serpent, and they are destined to kill one another at Ragnarok. In Old Saxon, Ragnarok, that name is later in Scandinavia, but in Old Saxon, it's Midspellis. We also have the Old Low Franconian Muspili and the Old High German Muspili. There's even a 9th century Old High German poem called Muspili. So these are the words for the end south of Scandinavia to the Germanic tribes. Now here's my favorite story about Thor. And I'm going to use Old Saxon names. One day, Thunar decided that he would attempt to catch the middle yard worm and kill it. Thunar disguised himself as a young boy and went fishing with the giant Humir, using the head of Humir's largest ox as bait. Thunar prepared a long and strong line with a large hook. Thunar and Humir rowed out as far as Humir normally went to fish, catching whales. However, Thunar kept urging and pushing Humir to row out further and further into the sea despite Humir's warnings. Thunar then revealed his true identity to Humir, insisting he row out further, pretty much saying, I am Thunar. Humir, listen to me. I will keep you safe with my great strength. And eventually the middle yard worm, Germanic Thor, bit the ox head, and Thunar pulled the worm's head out of the water, causing poison to drip out of his mouth into the sea. Thunar grabbed his hammer to kill the worm, but a panicking Humir cut the line, allowing the worm to sink back beneath the waves, to Thunar's dismay. If you like this video, visit our website at www.aldsidu.com and visit aldsidu.com/blog. We've got 100 or so blog articles. Please like and subscribe, share this videos, help the channel grow. And again, a shout out to Mr. Hawk for your wonderful donation to this channel and a microphone. So until next time.